We've been saying since the beginning of this journey, I've been saying since the beginning of this journey, onwards and upwards. And the reason why I say that is because that's where I want you to focus your attention when you stop drinking alcohol, not downwards and backwards. It doesn't matter the things that you've said when you were drinking, the things that you've done, the embarrassing times that you've had, the amount of alcohol that you've drank, the amount of time that you've drank. None of that makes any difference. The difference is to move yourself forwards now. The problem is that if you start to look backwards and you start to think about all the regrets that you've got, you think about all the times that you've said things to people that you shouldn't have said, the things that you've done that you shouldn't have done, the things that you've eaten that you shouldn't have eaten, the amount of alcohol that you've consumed that you shouldn't have consumed, all of these things lead you to a negative state. Now, if that negative state is moving you forwards and is moving you towards stopping drinking alcohol in the first part and staying stopped, but you are also focusing your mind forwards. So once you stop drinking alcohol, don't look back unless it's, you're trying to learn something from it. So move forwards, move into that new self that you want to develop, the new life that you want to develop, the new ways of thinking that you want to develop, and take it slowly. None of this is going to happen overnight. It all takes time. It all takes pushing past your own insecurities and your own anxieties and your own fears, and making sure that you just take it one step at a time. Just get today out of the way, move on to tomorrow. Get tomorrow out of the way, move on to the next day, so on and so forth. Eventually, if you need to apologize to anyone for anything that you've said or done to them in the past, my advice to anyone is not to even think about it yet, especially if you're in the earlier days, because, again, you don't want to overwhelm yourself with these things. And there is always a risk that, like it or not, some people might not want to forgive you. Some people might not want to put those things into the past. It depends, of course, on the person. It depends on what you've done. All that kind of stuff comes into it. But we tend to see things in people's reactions more than the words that they say. They could say, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I forgive you for what you've done." But in their words and in their facial expressions or their body language, you might pick up stuff that is, I'm just trying to say that there's going to be plenty of time down the road when you have forgiven yourself for a lot of the stuff that you've done, when you've started to look at yourself from a much brighter perspective. I remember in the beginning just being so downbeat on myself. So, I remember sitting on the balcony looking at my son and thinking, I've just been a shit dad, and that kind of hit me in the pit of my stomach. It was a moment that I'm grateful for now, because I can look back on it with that it was that flashpoint for me. But at the same time, it was something that really, I would think about certain things that I'd said or done when I was drunk and burst into tears, and just that emotional reaction. I'm not a big crying bloke, you know what I mean? I don't do that often, but that was something that happened, and it was something that really helped me to move forwards and to move away from the alcohol. So like I said, I'm grateful for that. But there comes a time when you're happy in yourself. You're glad. You look back at that person that made that decision to stop drinking, and you're clapping them on the back, And it's when you get to that stage that you're looking at your past self with much kinder eyes. And when you're looking at that from kinder eyes, then it's a lot easier to turn that around and start making your apologies if need be to other people. A lot of the time you don't need to make apologies. I mean, a lot of the time these other people will have forgotten. They'll say, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about," and we're holding these things in our heads. Sometimes making an apology can be it can be cathartic for ourselves, not for the other person. But you know, it is what it is. You know, I think you can only live your life as you're thinking now. And when you're full of fear and doubt in the beginning, even though it's all mixed up with excitement and hope for the journey ahead, it can be very daunting to move forwards into the unknown, not knowing, you know, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it. And you know, oftentimes your viewpoint, looking forwards at yourself, can be clouded by who you are right in that moment. But it's only, you know, when you get days behind you and then weeks behind you and months behind you, it strengthens not your self-esteem. I'm not really interested in that, but it strengthens your self-confidence, your ideas about that you can do this, and that you have done it. You know, you can, like I said, pat yourself on the back for a job well done. And I'm not talking about that in a prideful way. I'm talking about it from the perspective of, as an encouragement to, you know, a lot of courage comes from the inside. It's not from the outside. Other people can try and encourage you to do this. You know, that's what these videos are about, to try and inspire you and encourage you to take that first step and to take the second step. Because I know that if you move forwards in this and you start to face the challenges and face the obstacles that are inevitably going to come your way, because you're changing a whole set and subset of ideas about yourself. You know, the big thoughts that you have about your life will change, but also there's so many knock-on effects in different areas of your life that will also change. So it's to have the courage to face into those and to attack those challenges and to attack those problems as best you can in the moment. And to, you know, when you have obvious failures, and I'm not talking about drinking, that's not, you know, this is, hopefully you leave that behind you. You know, you've made the decision at the beginning, and no matter what happens, you're not going to put any more alcohol into your mouth. But life is going to throw failures at you. Life is going to throw things at you where you're just not successful. But it's the success comes in you carrying on regardless and pushing yourself forwards. And once you get to that stage, it just makes things much easier. It makes the decisions that you need to take about your future much easier. You know, it makes looking in the mirror a lot fucking easier, I'll tell you that much, you know. And the longer you take this journey, the more successes you build up for yourself, the more self-confidence you build up for yourself. And that's what it's all about, right? You know, it's for me, self-confidence is built with action and, you know, trying things and failing and, you know, not achieving things and then pushing yourself through that and achieving things, right? And, you know, just living a good life. And I think if, you know, that's an earned life, it's not something that is, you know, self-esteem sometimes it comes across to me as being something that is, that we feel like we're entitled to, or we feel like, I think it gives us an excuse for, you know, I've got low self-esteem, therefore you know, I can excuse all this shitty behavior or this shitty thinking of mine. Whereas you never think like that if you have good self-confidence, never, you know. So it is what it is. Hopefully you got something out of that video today. If you give us a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. It doesn't take you a second. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you're looking for some help from me personally, everything that we do over in Habits V2 is done by me. All the videos are mine. All the one-on-one coaching is from me, right? We only have a small amount of people coming across. So take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you soon. Habitsv2.com is the website. Onwards and upwards. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. Bye now.